Hey, it's been a while, guys. Let's take a look at what's going on in the shop. So we got actually a lot of supercharged engines in here. This is an LT4. We'll fire it up for you in a minute. This is another LT4. We'll fire that up for you in a minute. This little LJ is going to be getting an LT4. I think that's crazy, but that's what the owner wants, and the owner works for me, so hopefully I won't lose an employee. So this one is an L87. We're going to come back to this because this is really a groundbreaking build. Over here we have the king of the supercharged GM engines. This is an LT5, and we're going to start this one up for you too. We had to LT5s are a little bit different of an animal. They are dry sump engines, so we got these cool headers on it. We got a dry sump oil tank because they don't offer the LT5 in a wet sump, and you know, at the end of the day, that's better for off-roading. It's just more difficult to package. I think we're going to remove the battery and remote mount that, and then put this tank in its place. We are running all the GM electronics. This is the LT5 GM engine controller. This is the secondary fuel injector controllers. This engine actually has two sets of injectors. You got the direct injectors and another set of port injectors. And you'll also notice that you got manifold pressure sensors around this engine. Some before basically you have one before the intake, one before the supercharger, one after the supercharger, and in a lot of cases a barometric sensor too, which I'm pretty sure this has. So this is our secondary injectors, and the reason they do that, with these engines putting at 600, 700, 800 horsepower, if you lose fuel pressure, you could damage the engine by going lean. So GM went safe and built in extra horsepower in the LT5 by going to the second set of port injectors. This is the power distribution center. That's our fuel pump controller. We did fit I think it's an Aeromotive high performance pump, 300 liters per hour or whatever. And of course we're running the complete GM fuel system. This vehicle is running the heavy duty Atlas, which should hold the power of this engine. This isn't a standard Atlas, it's I think they call it the race case. So over here we got some new engines we just got from GM, and it has been difficult getting these out of GM. This is a 8L90 four-wheel drive, 310L80s, brand new four-wheel drive, LT1, and one of the nice things about our conversion, guys, is that we're all GM. Engine, transmission, operating system, wiring harness, all GM. I'm going to mention this quick. This is a 660 horsepower cammed LS3. Body's finally on. We got some nice Cook's headers on it. This is going to be an old-fashioned hot rod. It's got a 6-speed Tremec in it. Should be fun. Most of you guys saw that 1,004 horsepower GM 600 and something cubic inch monster engine they just came out with. It looks to me like it's based on a big block Chevy, so it's old school. This is Gen 4, so it's not the latest and greatest, but it's pretty high tech compared to that. Let's walk over here. What do we got? We got a brand new LT1. Take a quick look at the accessory drive. We got this is a 6-liter. I think this is the last 6-liter that MoTech's going to do. It's already spoken for, waiting to go into a vehicle. Bunch of axles. We've got Rubicon transfer cases everywhere. So I was talking about staying all GM. This is an LS7 that we just pulled out of a Jeep that was done back in Florida. I'm not sure where the Jeep is, but if you look at this engine, we got a Hemi throttle body with a spacer. We got GM front accessory drive. Looks like we got a cam sensor there. That's GM. Now this is an odd combination because even though this is a late model JK it came out of, it was running an early model NGC4 computer, which is strange to me. But the reason is they're running a NAGS 5-speed transmission, and this is not the ultimate in transmissions, as you guys know. The 5-speed is well known for being a irrational shifting transmission. I call it sometimers. And I can say this LS7, while it did have some power, it has a lot of power, This transmission just didn't hack it. Didn't shift right. Didn't shift when you wanted it to. And then again, we've got this adapter plate to allow the NAGS 1 to run with the LS engine. And then, you know, your hybrid and stuff, like you're using a GM starter, but you gotta cut the bell housing. We like to stay all GM. So we got over here is a new, and this is the value king right now, guys. This is the L83. The L83 is an LT engine, so it's got high compression, direct injection. You notice there's no injectors in the intake. This is one of my favorite engines. It's an awesome engine. It puts out really good horsepower. I've been driving Jeeps on 40s with this engine, having no problem. It doesn't struggle with that high compression. And you got VVT, which is this is your VVT phaser. This is a dual stage oil pump to save gas, you know, for fuel economy. This is a cam sensor up here. We got active fuel management in this engine. The L84, which is the newer version of this engine, has DFM, or dynamic fuel management, and we're going to be talking about that when we do the L87. Walking around this engine, this is our high pressure fuel pump in here, which you really can't see with all these insulators. This is the high pressure, one of the high pressure sensors, and you can see this has 3 wires. If this had 4 wires, this would be an earlier engine. This tells me that this engine is 2017 or newer. This one sensor with 3 wires puts out, I believe, 4 signals. It actually has its own little serial communication with the ECM. So with less wires, it transmits more information. And we all know that the LTs are about information. They've got a 9-wire, I think it's 9-wire MAF sensor, because they got humidity sensor, intake air temp sensor, airflow sensor. But I do believe the L87 went to another serial sensor. So they reduced the number of wires on the MAF sensor, but they get more information because they went to a serial network. So we're stocking up with these L83 guys. There's a couple of more new ones over there, and all these L83s are already spoken for. We're hoping to get 10 more of them in soon from GM because they're just fabulous engines. Yeah. All right, let's go on back to the L87. I want to take a look at that MAF sensor real quick and see if it has the reduced wire count. Yeah. It's not plugged in, but you can see that it's a smaller connector. 4 wires, but those 4 wires transmit a lot of information versus the old style MAF sensors. So this build, you guys have been seeing it for a while, and it's been a challenge because this is the new L87 with a 10-speed, and it's 2020 or 2021. Latest and greatest. We didn't take any shortcuts on the modules. This vehicle has double throwdown. It has an Atlas transfer case. So Callan's been spending a lot of time on this Jeep, because one of the things we wanted to do was we wanted to stay with, what is this, an E90, Callan?
Yeah, I believe that this is an E90, and then this is the T93.
So this is the new transmission control module that really nobody supports. And we just have to break new ground, just like we did with the LS in 2007, just like we did with the LTs in 2014. These are coming in the new Silverados, and we need to support this engine so we can remain compliant in the JL and the JT, which most of you know we are going to support. Not only did this vehicle get an L87, which is very complex, but you can see it has S-pods and all sorts of electronics and just the stuff that that take a little bit longer on the build. It does have our battery tray, so that cleans things up. And I'm surprised this L87 fits really, really good. This is a late model JK, isn't it? Or is it early? Yeah, it's late. You can tell by the firewall. Has our new valance on it. Check this out. Notice how close this transmission cooler is to the core of the, well, that happens to be the AC condenser. You need to keep those pretty close, because when the fan turns on, you want it to suck air through the transmission cooler. If you have the transmission cooler way up here, which we see all the time, then it's not going to get as much airflow as it would if it was properly mounted. Callan, can we start this?
Yes.
This motor has DFM, which is dynamic fuel management. We got a Type 2 GM pump on it, so that pump's going to be good for as much hydraulic energy as we need. We are doing the electronics to interface the JK with the L87, and actually we don't have to do very much. Well, we're low on gas. The main light is a security light, and the reason that's flashing is because this is a single module. We're running a MoTech single module system in this, and what that means is there is no Jeep computer. So if we look out here, you notice the tachometer and temp gauge and all that work. There is no Jeep computer. It's gone. And what that means is our module transmits the VIN number of and the security codes to the rest of the network like it was the PCM. And that way everything works the way it's supposed to, including your security. Well, because the VIN number is not programmed into our single module, or at least all the information is not programmed into our single module, that's why that security light's on. And we're going to have a GUI so that you guys can program your own VIN number in. We are working on it, fetching the VIN number out of the tip of it and then auto programming it, but we're not there yet. So this is actually a big accomplishment. As far as I know, this is going to be the first L87 using the real L87 controllers. Many of you might know that GM really cracked down on programming their modules after 2019, and this is at least a 20, maybe a 2021. So this is going to be another first of its kind as far as I know. Cal, let's start up one of these LT4s, let them hear what it sounds like. Now you probably heard, this one's a little loud. You probably heard that fan come on. We got a rear mounted transmission cooler because we've got an intercooler up front. We were also running full computer control on the intercooler pump and the wastegate, which a lot of guys don't do on these. Everything is computer controlled on this vehicle. This one is running an 8-speed transmission. All right, shut this one off. Let's start this LT4. This LT4 is a 10-speed, and this one has quieter exhaust, I think. Now this guy's running an overdrive pulley, probably a custom tune. But the beautiful thing about the LT4 is it's very mild. As you can see how smooth this engine is, there is no rump, and it's still well over 600 horsepower. We'll do a drive test in one of these so you can see how mild these things really are, yet at the same time how much power they put out. Let's walk over here to this. Go ahead, shut this one off. So as I stated, I don't want to lose an employee, but this is a really nice LJ, and it belongs to Kalen. So Kalen, why do you want to put an LT4 in this? So, well, he won't admit it. Kalen's going to put an LT4 in this LJ, and it's going to be probably one of the quickest LJs out there. And the thing about the LT4 is it's so mild, it's not going to be a problem driving that every day, but it's going to be a little bit dangerous, in my opinion, when you get on the throttle with this amount of power, because this LJ weighs thousands of pounds less than those JKs. And when you combine that with the power, what transmission are you going with?
8-speed.
Why are you going with the 8-speed over the 10-speed?
Just because I like the functionality of the dipstick. If I'm out on the trail, I can fill it up quick, repair it. I don't have to worry about having the pump. Yeah, and I'm going to say something about that. The 8-speeds you can put a dipstick in. The 6-speeds, of course, you can put a dipstick in. The 10-speeds have no dipstick and no provision for it. Also, the 10-speeds, the earlier ones, have a drain plug that you can service the transmission with. The 20 and up, or 19 and up, like this one, don't have a drain plug. If you find, and a couple of my customers have made this mistake, if you find a 10L80 without a dipstick, I'm sorry, without a drain plug in the pan, it's most likely not going to work with anything earlier than a 2019 controller. So be careful. I get guys buying 17 engines and they'll get a good deal on a 20 transmission, and it's just not going to work unless you have that drain plug. This happens to be an earlier LJ, meaning it's not a 5 or a 6, and I can tell because it's got the old 3 computer. It's got the transmission control module over here. These were more difficult to support, but of course it's not difficult for us. We can get everything to work on the dash and all that. The LJs do have a pretty strong frame, but I could see us beefing some stuff up. Now, a lot of you are going to say, hey, can you do a swap in my LJ? And the answer is, well, yes, we can, but right now we are so backed up. We're backed up till about March on new builds, maybe April, and we are trying, and that's just on JKs. We're potentially going to open another shop up to just handle the non-JK builds. That includes the JL and the JTs, the LJ TJs, and maybe even the YJs and the CJs. So that's kind of where we're going.
We want to support you guys with the LJs. Now, what would make a great engine in this LJ? I think a 5.3 LT would be awesome. It'd be more than enough power. It would get good fuel economy. And in this little LJ, it would not only outperform, I think this engine was rated about 160, 170 horsepower. You're going to be pushing 350 to 360 horsepower with a 5.3, and you should get much better gas mileage with the high compression and all that. This is one of the last of the 4 liters. 4 liter was a great motor. Okay, 1, it's iron. 2, you can see they tried to update it. This is a synchronizer. This is where the distributor used to go on the older 4 liters. And when Jeep tried to update this motor, which they did, you know, they put a serpentine belt on it and they added fuel injection, but you know, it's lipstick on a pig. They needed a top dead center sensor for misfire detection and other reasons. And this motor was pretty much made as efficient as they could make it. But you got to remember, the roots of this engine go back decades, many decades. And the weight, the size, and the fact that they, you know, they did as much as they could updating it. It was a great motor. Don't get me wrong. And it's a very reliable engine. One thing I'll tell you guys with these 4 liters, let me walk around here. If you have the returnless system, which means you can see the fuel rail here doesn't have a regulator or a hose coming off the back. So what would happen is you'd pump the fuel in up here, and then debris would, on the newer ones, the debris would accumulate back here, and then you start having problems with this number 6 injector. The earlier ones that had the return line to the tank, it flushed the rail out, and they kind of worked better. But when they went to the single line system, which reduces evap emissions because it keeps the fuel cooler, we did find that. So make sure you run a good fuel filter, and if you have any problems, pull this fuel rail out and flush it out. But this was an excellent engine. It's just, its days were numbered. And a 5.3 LT in this would more than double the horsepower and get much better gas mileage, which I think would be appropriate for this. But if you go to an LT4, this thing is going to be like a rat fink vehicle, if you guys know what I'm talking about. So that's kind of what's going on in the shop right now. I could show you all the other JKs. We got a ton of bills in here and a ton more outside. And we're going to start test driving these one at a time. I will say that I'm really excited to drive the LT5, the LT7, the 660 horsepower LS3. We're going to take that LS7 vehicle, which I showed you the engine, which was the hybrid, and we're going to put an LT1 in it, and then I'll try to do a side-by-side comparison, because I did some videos on it before, and then we'll do a video on it after we get the LT1. And my prediction is, not only is it going to be faster, but the drivability is just going to be on a different level, because that thing was like driving a dragster when it came in. Couple things about this LT5. You can see we got these polyurethane mounts. They're supposed to be good for 1,000 horsepower. I guess we're going to find out. This drive came out of, actually it's custom made in California by Drive Junkie, I think is the name. Anyway, it lays out pretty good in the JK, and one of the things that it does is it mounts this high volume power steering pump backwards so we can clear the steering gear. And that just worked out great. You can see how much clearance we have here. We have no clearances issues with this engine, and sometimes on the LT4s we do. It's running a little Sankyo or a Sand-In compact air compressor, which is just enough for the JK. We got I believe it's a 10 groove supercharger belt, and then all the accessories are being driven off the 6 groove belt in the back, which they should be. And you can see we got the belt off right now. We don't want to be spinning that power steering pump. So we're just going to start this thing up quick for you. Look, you got a map sensor over here, you got a map sensor over there, there's another one in the back. They got a lot of technology in this motor, and we're gonna test drive this hopefully in the near future. With all the bills that we have going on right now, it's been taking a long time, as you guys know, but that's just the deal today, you know, with parts shortages, labor shortages. Just getting parts out of GM has been difficult, and like everybody else in the industry, it doesn't really matter who you call. They're all out months, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, and we're making steady progress. But the bills like this, custom bills like this LT5 and this L87, they just take a lot of R&D, and MoTech is usually the first ones that figure this stuff out, and then everybody else copies us. So we're proud of that, and it just takes more time, and we're going to continue to do that and bring you the latest and greatest. So here's the pedal GM supplies. with the LT5 package. It looks like they're standard. Basically, the sensor is the same in most all of these. They do wire some of them different. I think they went with this steel one because it's easier to modify. You can bend it, weld it, move it around wherever you need it to be. Then we do have a data link connector on this, which is great. GM does lock down these computers, so they're almost impossible to get the bootloader to work. But on the GM performance engines, I think we're going to be able to do programming on this if we need to. I haven't got to that point yet, but we'll let you know. All right, give it a shot whenever you're ready.
Ready?
Motor's kind of loud. You really can't hear anything when it's running, especially when you got F-35s flying over your head. So stay tuned. We'll be doing some test drives here soon.